I started researching this intersection between programming and philosophy and arts and other sciences when I went through burnout. Basically, I needed a break from technology, so I decided to read classics, decided to go to art exhibitions, read philosophy, and enjoy like the other side of my brain more. The more I did it, the more I found that these are two sides of the same coin. And programming and painting and philosophy and everything, it's just an abstraction over some fundamental human qualities. Programming is an abstraction over logic. Painting is an abstraction over perception. And that's why I started making these videos, because I find it fascinating that art and science are actually so close. And when I was researching the French philosopher Henri Bergson for my last video, where I talk about how his philosophy of duration is related to how we perceive latency, I came across another quote from another Frenchman who was deeply inspired by Bergson, but at the same time he didn't agree with Bergson's idea that science could not display the human condition because it couldn't measure it. And this Frenchman was the poet Paul Valéry. And I found this really interesting because it's rare to see a man of the arts say that the human condition can be distilled down to numbers. But Paul Valéry is a pretty interesting person. He showed early brilliance as a poet in his first published works in his 20s. But then when he was, I think, 21 and 22, he stopped publishing and he stopped writing for the next 2 decades. Edmund Wilson has this quote about him: Paul Valéry, the great poet who can hardly bring himself to write poetry, who can hardly even bring himself to explain why he cannot bring himself to write poetry. He didn't believe that there was some divine inspiration or intervention that is working through you in order for you to be creative and to write and to create something. He wanted to understand how the mind worked. He wanted to understand how creativity came to be. And he devoted the next 2 decades to the exact sciences, mathematics and physics. I think he would be deeply fascinated if he saw that paper that was published recently that said that adversarial poetry is one of the best ways to jailbreak an LLM. And it's just ironic how maybe the biggest scientific and engineering wonder that we've created in recent history can be broken down by poetry, of all things. Now, I tried to do it myself and I didn't manage to. Like, I always hit the security check of every LLM that I tried to do it with, but I'm probably on a list now because I tried multiple times to get the models to tell me how to enrich uranium with my bad attempts at poetry. Maybe Paul Valéry could do it, but I couldn't. But anyway, in his 40s, Paul Valéry returned to poetry and he came full circle with his beliefs. About that time, technology was starting to change the arts. Basically, in the past, art was constricted by some physical medium. So if you had a painting, it only existed in one place. If you had like a concert, it could only be done in one place. In order for you to enjoy art, you had to physically go somewhere. In order for you to create art, you needed a place to exhibit it and to show it. But with cinema and with photography, the arts were changing. Paul Valéry said that this will not just change how we create art, it will change our perception and our notion of art itself. We must expect great innovations to transform the entire technique of the arts, thereby affecting artistic invention itself and perhaps even bringing about an amazing change in the very notion of art. This was stuck in my mind and I just couldn't get it out, because as a software engineer, my craft is currently undergoing changes because of new technologies and because of LLMs. And for the past year, I've been thinking, where exactly is this craft headed? How will my work change in the future? And I think that we can look into the past to try to make some guesses about the future. One such revolution in the past was how painters adapted to photography. The famous painter Paul Delaroche said, from today, painting is dead, when he saw the first photograph. Around that time, artists were denouncing photography as the enemy of art, because it allowed anyone who had access to a camera to create like a painting of reality much faster and much quicker than a painter would, and much cheaper. And people could do it without spending decades of their lives mastering the craft and mastering like the colors and how light falls and how do you structure an image and learning about anatomy in order to be able to paint a human body. You know, people say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. This immediately brought back all the social media posts about how programming is dead and how people shouldn't learn programming and how if you're in college, go study something else because programming and software engineering is gone now. now, essentially, with LLMs. So I decided to see how painters adapted to this, because they've lived through this and we're living through it now. Like, we're the painters of the 21st century. Now, when you have a camera, when you have a tool that can represent reality, people are no longer interested in how reality looks, but they will be interested in your imagination, in your perception of how reality looks. Basically, this freed painters from the idea that they have to represent the objective reality that we all experience, and they could kind of show their impression of it. This contributed to the explosion of modernist art movements in the 19th century, and this is how Impressionism started. Claude Monet made the painting Impression Sunrise, and people like laughed at him at first, and they told him that this was a sketch. It wasn't a painting because it wasn't precise, it wasn't specific, but he meant to show feeling. He didn't want to show reality as it is, he wanted to show reality as he experienced it. If we go back to programming, I remember seeing the first GPT demos and how you could give it a prompt to create a button that looks like a watermelon, and it would create a button with a pink background and a green border, even though you didn't tell it the colors. It would just derive them from the fact that you used the word watermelon, and it would create an actual good React component. We've gone a really long way since then. Now you have AIs building entire pages, you've got AIs building services, you've got them. The progress in the industry is incredible. And everybody, like from social media hype men to CEOs to engineers, everybody's speculating on what is happening with the craft and where the industry is headed. And no one has yet proven to be right. We didn't lose our jobs, as people said, but companies now expect us to be more efficient with AI tools. We didn't turn into software designers who only review code, but I read a lot more code than I used to read. English didn't become the de facto programming language, but you need to be able to express your thoughts clearly in order to get the LLM to do what you want it to do. It's undeniable that the post-LLM world is different, but I think that many of our colleagues are focusing on the wrong things. Many people say that AI is allowing them to work faster and to be more productive. But I don't think that's the point. Like, you didn't see painters trying to shell out portraits faster. They tried to find the things that the camera couldn't represent. The camera represented reality, and the painter could show their inner perception of reality. The same way, I think that we should be focusing on doing the things that the LLMs are not good at doing. People said that code will become an abstraction, like machine code. But there is one fundamental difference. Compilers are deterministic. They have a bunch of checks, they have useful error messages, and they have a deterministic output. LLMs are statistical next token predictors, and you have no guarantee that the same operation will be executed the same way and that you will get the same output. And honestly, LLMs have gotten incredible at writing code. They can write better code than me. Given the correct instructions, they can write it faster than me. But I still need to make sure that what they output is correct. People said that we will become orchestrators, that we will be managing agents. But I find this to be incredibly difficult and also mentally taxing, because I tried to do it. I tried to run multiple agents, get one to update dependencies, get another one to change one of the JavaScript tools that I use, get a third one to make a change to a React application. And doing this for an hour is making me feel like my mind's gone through the blender. It's incredibly taxing. And the context switching alone is, again, turning you into the bottleneck. How will AI change software engineering? Honestly, I do not know, and I do not dare to guess anymore. Let me give you an example with something that I saw earlier this year. I was helping a friend of mine with his startup, and his workflow is something straight out of a sci-fi novel. He uses an AI transcription tool, so he dictates what he wants the AI to do. One model is transcribing this, clearing up the uhs and ahs and all the little inconsistencies, formulating it, adding punctuation and everything to the text, and then he's submitting this paragraph to Cursor, and then Cursor is creating a plan, and then it's implementing the plan after he agrees to it or makes changes. No one earlier this year was suggesting on social media that we would be talking to the LLMs, and this would be the fastest and the best way to use them. But it turns out that it is, because speech is faster than typing. And since you can use an LLM to clear up and structure your speech, you don't even have to be that precise. And I saw this post on the Pragmatic Engineer that showed that many startups were doing this as well. So yeah, no one could foresee this happening, but it's happened. The trend that we see is that LLMs are good at self-contained problems that can be solved entirely in the IDE. And many people didn't believe that AI would be good at programming because of all the creativity that goes into it, but this is a purely text-based problem. And this is why, for example, front-end development seems to be more affected than back-end development, because there you have everything contained inside of, purely inside of the code base. Like, you don't have a separate database, you don't have other systems that you're communicating with. You have the components and the CSS and the markup and the logic all together, and it's easier to train LLMs on them. That's why in one of their reports from this year, Anthropic said that one of the main use cases for their AI is to generate user interfaces. Another trend that we see is about non-determinism. Any application that has an LLM in its core introduces a level of chaos, a level of non-determinism, because you do not have that idempotence of the operations in it. And Martin Fowler said that, like other engineering field, we would start thinking in terms of tolerances. Basically, your error and your error tolerance will dictate how far you can go. You can go with AI. And again, in front-end development, we have a higher error tolerance because a mistake or an inconsistency in the pixels can lead to a bad user experience, or maybe at worst at reduced purchases. But it will not break the system. It will not lead to fragmentation in the database or corrupted data or anything, or like anything more critical than that. I don't think that front-end development is going anywhere. Like, I'm currently working predominantly on the front end, and I love it. But it seems that the things that the LLMs are not that good at are high-stakes problems that do not fit entirely into the IDE. So that's why I think that focusing on something like distributed systems for the future is a good bet, because when you have multiple components, multiple systems, it's very difficult to contain all this context at once, so you need the human to reason about these complex problems. You know, these kind of videos usually end with a piece of advice or some guess about the future. Honestly, I do not know what the future holds. I have come to terms that I will be surfing the technological waves made by other people, and I will have to react to them. But I can tell you what I plan to do. I don't want to build passable UIs that have quickly been put together by an LLM. I want to build great UIs. I don't want to build systems that crumble under pressure when they go beyond the prototype phase. I want to build systems that scale. I don't want to write code and treat it like a black box, because it's not ready to be treated like a black box. People still need to figure it out. You still need to be able to understand what goes inside of these projects. I will not settle for mediocrity. This is what I'm going to do. And if at some point my work is no longer needed, then I will happily go and install drywall or do something like this, and I will be happy that I've done good work up until that point. Thank you.